Marmaris, with 9,500 inhabitants, is one of the larger resorts on the Aegean coast and is very popular with the British. It's an attractive place set in a picturesque bay. The main beach is small with reddish sand. It's relatively quiet, many holidaymakers preferring the more developed beach at Ichmalair, the next resort along the coast. There's an attractive flower-lined promenade behind the beach. And in the centre, there's an old town, where you'll find most of the shops and cafes. Marmaris has a good range of both shops and restaurants. Also, traffic here is not normally a problem. A new marina has ensured that Marmaris is a major centre for yachting and boating. This in turn has attracted new upmarket shops and restaurants. The whole area is particularly popular in the early evening, with tourists window shopping and dining. The west of the town on the way to Ichmalair is being heavily developed, with several new hotels and apartment blocks being built. The beach at this end of town is disappointing. It's actually a narrow, hard-packed strip of sand which doubles as a road. There are, however, a series of wooden jetties that many holidaymakers use for sunbathing. Most have steps down for swimming. Ichmalair is set in a bay with a curved sandy beach. It's what they call an up-and-coming resort, which is brochure speak for it's not quite there yet. You can't miss this unfinished feel to the resort. The streets have only a few shops and cafes, with lots of gaps in between. There's a great deal of building work going on, as Ichmalair develops into an independent resort, rather than just an overspill from Marmaris. The beach is Ichmalair's main attraction. It's narrow and curved with ample facilities for hiring sunbeds, almost a necessity given the rough, reddish sand. Many of the holidaymakers are day trippers from Marmaris, attracted by the beach. It's only a 5-minute ride by road, or alternatively 15 minutes by boat dolmus, a sort of water bus. Bodrum is built across a promontory with a bay on each side. This gives the town a very long waterfront. The bay to the west has a new marina, but the seafront throughout Bodrum is attractive. However, there is no beach. The majority of holidaymakers here are British, although it's also popular with the Turks themselves. It's a hotel resort with very little self-catering. The nearest popular beach is Gumbert, a resort purpose-built 2 miles away. The beach is narrow and tends to get crowded. The sand is coarse, grey and hard-packed. There's no promenade, so the beach itself becomes the main walkway, and judging by the litter, did not appear to be regularly cleaned. It's very good for water sports, but there's little else here. A vast amount of building is going on throughout the Bodrum area. Officially, though, all major work has to stop during the main season. Many of the roads, however, don't have pavements, and with all the building work, are often dusty and bumpy. Bodrum has a lively nightlife with what must be the most spectacular open-air disco in the Eastern Mediterranean. Altinkum is set in a very picturesque bay with one of the best beaches on the Aegean coast. The sand is soft and silvery, the sea is clear, and the shore slopes very gently. It's an ideal beach for children. You can hire sunbeds, brollies and boats. Behind, the buildings are discreet, blending in well with the greenery. There's a new and attractive pavement promenade alongside most of the beach, and across the road from that, several shops, restaurants and bars. There's also an area further back from the front which has stalls, tourist shops and yet more cafes, but it all has a rather quiet feel to it. To the east of Altinkum is a smaller beach, but between the two beaches there's considerable development taking place. Newly opened hotels here are surrounded by building work. And the roads in the area are so bumpy that a tractor serves as the local taxi to and from the beach. Altinkum should be a fine resort. When it's finished, Kusadasi is the largest and the most established resort on the Aegean coast. It has a cosmopolitan feel with a tree-lined promenade and a paved walking area along the seafront. There are, however, no conventional beaches. In the centre, there are some man-made sandy areas, almost like sand pits, set back from the rocky coastline. On less windy days, you can swim from the breakwaters and jetties, though it's often rough here. The centre of Kusadasi is very western-looking and a pleasant area for walking and eating out. It's excellent for shopping, with a vast range of leather, gold and fashion shops, as well as plenty of bars, cafes and restaurants. Cadin-Lar, however, just to the south, has a good beach. But with the stiff breezes around here, the sea can get very choppy. Fun for adults, but possibly not for small children. The beach in Cadin-Lar has soft silvery sand, but being very narrow along its full length, it often gets crowded. There is the inevitable development going on. The worst area is between Cadin-Lar and Kusadasi. It won't be long before these two resorts merge into one.
For accommodation, you'll find that the hotels are often small and only 2 or 3 stories. Most Britons in hotels seem to stay half-board. There are also pensions, a sort of basic B&B, and self-catering apartments. If you're self-catering, you'll find only small shops in the resorts. Supermarkets have not yet arrived. But beware, manufactured goods like instant coffee and cornflakes are very expensive. Bread, though, and fresh fruit and vegetables are good buys.
All the resorts have a good selection of lokantas, the equivalent of the Greek taverna, often in the open air. They will sometimes have large menus outside, but don't assume that everything on them is always available. There are often no menus on the table. The waiter is quite likely to invite you into the kitchen to choose something or bring a selection to your table. Starters are usually metzas, small portions of seafood, yogurt dips and vegetables. You can make a meal of these alone, as some are quite filling. Each portion costs about 50 pence. You'll find that virtually every cafe has plenty of waiters, so the service tends to be attentive. Choosing wine is a bit hit and miss. Each restaurant has its own house label. However, we were told by some locals to avoid anything made in Izmir. The main course is usually lamb or fish. Lamb kebabs or lamb chops cost about £2. Fish is more expensive, around £3.50, but as it's sold by weight, you buy what you want. Turkish coffee is not everyone's taste. If you want a weaker coffee, ask for Nescafe. Liqueurs are quite expensive. Even the local brands cost around £2 a measure. If you were wondering about alcohol, even though Turkey is a Muslim country, it's freely available in the resorts. Only a few cafes in the non-tourist districts are alcohol-free. The local beer costs about 50 pence a bottle. It has a very similar taste to San Miguel in Spain. The local firewater is raki. It's similar to ouzo and also costs about 50 pence. It's normally drunk with water to help it down. Ayran is a popular local drink made out of yogurt and is supposed to settle upset stomachs.
It's like a milk yogurt.
Apple, mint and orange tea are also popular. A cup costs about 25 pence.
Not bad at all.
French brandy costs £1.20. Turkish brandy only 45 pence. In fact, it's far cheaper to drink the locally produced spirits. Turkish gin tasted quite different to our brands, but has the same effect. One of the best is the Temple of Apollo at Didyma. This is about 2 miles from Altınkum. Originally, it was meant to be one of the 7 wonders of the world, but it was never completed. The problem was it was just £2 grand. There was not enough money to pay for it. In fact, the builders never got round to putting a roof on the temple. But the most popular excursion is to the ruins of Ephesus. To the north of Kusadasi, this is a truly amazing sight, the ruins of the once thriving city colonized by the Greeks in 11 BC. The theatre holds 25,000 people and is still used today for arts festivals. One of the most impressive and much photographed features is the elaborate facade of the Celsus Library. It's worth remembering that these ruins cover several acres, and the marble roads, although well preserved, can be quite slippery and hard on the feet. A pair of flat shoes is essential, as is a hat, given the heat. If you want to avoid the crowds, don't go on a Saturday. That's the day Turkish schools have their organised trips to Ephesus. You would never describe the experience as peaceful. The sea is the other big attraction. You can take a boat trip to Rhodes and Kos, the neighbouring Greek islands, but you'll need your passport. Or if you just fancy cruising around the coast, you can hire a gullet, a boat with a crew for the day. They start at about £110, but if there are, say, 6 of you, it's not so expensive. And on many gullet trips, wine and food are included and served on board. Taxis cost about 40 pence a mile, and even though they're not metered, most drivers seem to be honest. Even cheaper is the dolmus, or stuffed taxi. These run on fixed routes, often marked on the front. They're usually jeeps or minibuses and wait until they're stuffed full before they move off. They cost about 25 pence a mile, and tourists often use them between their hotels and the beach. There are bus services to the larger resorts from Izmir and Dalaman, but not always to the smaller resorts. You normally buy a ticket before you get on. To hire a small car costs from £10 a day, and you need an international driving licence. Be careful when driving though. The Turks believe that right-of-way goes to the biggest vehicle. Also, the roads are bumpy, and if it rains, very slippery. There are filling stations on most main roads along the coast. They're not normally self-service, and you'll find petrol is cheap, about £1 a gallon.